Well, the Supreme Court is set to hear arguments this fall on a case which could dramatically affect abortion in the United States. The court will hear a case involving the state of Mississippi, which is seeking to enforce its ban on abortion after 15 weeks. A decision favorable to the state could lay the groundwork for allowing more restrictions on abortion. Several states are seeking to ban abortion once a baby's heartbeat is detected, which is typically after 6 weeks. And joining us now is Robert George, McCormick Professor of Juris-Prudence and Director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. Professor George, welcome back. Always great to be with you. Tell us more about this case, Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, and why it's so important for the pro-life movement.
Well, this is the big one. We've had a so-called constitutional right to abortion since 1973, when the Supreme Court handed down its misbegotten ruling in Roe against Wade, holding that there was a national right to abortion, despite the fact that there's nothing like that in the text or logic or structure or original understanding of the Constitution. But we've lived with that constitutional and moral abomination for all these decades. Well, now, because of the law in Mississippi forbidding abortion, passed by the legislature, forbidding abortion after 15 weeks of gestation, that is, forbidding elective abortions, abortions that are not required to preserve the health or save the life of the mother. We have a test case, and the Supreme Court has taken the case. That means the Supreme Court's going to consider whether finally to reverse Roe versus Wade and to send the question of abortion back to the legislatures. Most people are predicting that the law will be upheld, and that's a good thing. Certainly from the pro-life point of view, that's a good thing. The justices on the court look poised to uphold it. The real question is, will they take this golden opportunity to put Roe versus Wade on the ash heap of history where it belongs? I hope and pray that they will do that, Tracy.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and some say this could be the beginning of the end of Roe versus Wade. Could you explain to us why that is and why that could indeed be the case?
Yes, it's because Roe versus Wade establishes a constitutional right to abortion up to the point of viability. It's actually even more radical than that, but I won't go into the nuances and details. But 15 weeks is before the point of viability, the point at which the child can survive, even if with assistance outside the mother's womb. So this is a direct challenge to Roe versus Wade. And the legislature of Mississippi knew that it was challenging Roe in enacting this legislation. So it's going to be difficult to do what the justices seem like they're going to do, which is to uphold that law without addressing the question of Roe versus Wade and reversing that decision.
Well, we know you'll be following that, as will we. Earlier, Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reported that Democrats are reintroducing the Women's Health Protection Act to try and enshrine abortion rights regardless of changes at the state level. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, and if it were to pass, the impact.
Shame on the Democrats. Shame on their disrespect for the sanctity of human life in all stages and conditions. When I was a young boy growing up in West Virginia with my grandfathers who were coal miners and union men, and of course Democrats stood for the little guy. Democrats stood for the weak and the vulnerable. Well, here they have turned their back on the littlest guy of all, the weakest and most vulnerable member of the human family. They wish to expose children, let's be clear, up to birth. With the violence, the lethal violence of abortion. I hope they can be prevented from doing that in the United States Congress.
I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. As you know, churches across the United States are reopening following the pandemic. Can we talk about the importance of attending Mass in person rather than virtually?
Yes. That's right. Well, I'm very glad that finally churches are reopening. I'm glad that bishops are lifting the dispensation from the obligation to attend Sunday Mass. Remember, we need to be there with our Lord in person. He's there at Mass in person in the Eucharist, body, blood, soul, and divinity. We need to be there in person if we possibly can be. Now, it was a blessing when we couldn't be, that at least we could access Mass online, and many people took advantage of that, which was wonderful. But that is only a fifth best solution. The first best solution, and what our obligation is to be there in person with our Lord, to receive him bodily in the Eucharist. It's an amazing thing that he makes himself available to us, body and blood, in the Holy Eucharist. Well, we mustn't turn down that invitation or miss the opportunity to receive him in his fullness.
Robbie, thank you so much for your time today. We always appreciate it. Robert George McCormick, Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. Thank you again.
Thank you.